My name is Dr. Doug Bremner. I'm a professor of psychiatry and radiology at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And I wanted to clear up some misconceptions that I've been seeing on the internet about Accutane and Roaccutane, the generic name for which is isotretinoin, or mianserin is the brand name in the U.S., which is used in the treatment of acne. So I'm just to be clear, I'll just use Accutane to refer to all these drugs, but they're all the same chemical composition, and the generic name is isotretinoin. I've heard some things on the internet saying that there's no evidence that Accutane can cause depression or suicidality, and some references to sites at the dermatologic society saying that it's misinformation, that it causes depression, can cause depression and suicide, and that's simply not true. We've had proof that Accutane can cause depression and suicide going back now 23 years. Back in 2000, and the year 2000, the United States Food and Drug Administration conducted a panel with members from industry and from academia, and the conclusion from the FDA at that time, as written in a paper in the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology by Dan Wasowski, and in a report which you can get online from Marilyn Pitts, is that there is good evidence that Accutane could cause depression and suicidality. The primary evidence that was pointed to was 41 cases of challenge, de-challenge, re-challenge, which is when someone takes the drug, they become depressed. The depression clears up when they go off the drug, and then they get depressed again when they go back on the drug. And that series was reported to the FDA. It was presented by the FDA official, Marilyn Pitts, at that conference. Dan Wasowski also presented 37 cases of completed suicide reported in the U.S. That number that's been reported to the FDA is now up over 500, and there's an even larger number of unexplained deaths following treatment with Accutane for the treatment of acne in people who are typically in their 20s. The fact that you see a challenge, de-challenge, re-challenge is evidence alone of a causal relationship between a drug and an outcome, as you can see in the textbook of pharmacoepidemiology. There's been this myth, or propaganda that's been perpetuated by the manufacturer, originally Roche, and then others in the dermatologic community, that there's no evidence for an association, and that's simply false. You don't need to do a clinical trial where you randomize people to a drug versus a placebo with the outcome of completed suicide to prove that a drug can cause completed suicide. Now, I'm not saying that everybody that takes the drug becomes depressed. That's obvious. But I am saying that every time that someone takes an Accutane pill and it passes their lips, it's having an effect on their brain. Whether or not it gets to the point that it causes clinical depression or other side effects it depends on individual circumstances. We did a study where we showed that there's a 28% decrease in brain function in a brain area that plays a key role in mood and depression, called the orbital frontal cortex. And in every single individual in which we saw a decrease in brain function, that they also developed headache, which to me signifies that there's something going on in their brain. That was a significant difference between people who were treated for 3 months with Accutane versus those who were treated for 3 months with antibiotic. And the fact that it was significant in only 28 people shows to me that there was a strong association there. The manufacturer of Accutane, Roche, attempted to get that article retracted and accused me of fraud to my university, but they were unsuccessful in doing so because there was no fraud. The fact is that this drug can have an effect on brain function, and we showed that in that study. There's plenty of other evidence which I reviewed in a paper I wrote most recently, 2021, in the Journal of Personalized Medicine, called Isotretinoin and Neuropsychiatric Side Effects. Continued vigilance is needed. You can find it just by Googling that title, and there's links to a number of the papers I've referenced in that in that paper. Other evidence that it affects the brain is from animal studies, like Callie O'Reilly writing in the journal Neuropsychopharmacology in 2006 showed that Accutane or isoretinoin can cause depression-type behaviors in mice. And then Peter McCaffrey and James Crandall, writing in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, USA, showed that it inhibits nerve growth in a part of the brain we know is involved in depression called the hippocampus. And there's many other studies showing that it has effects on neurobiology in the brain. It is part of this superreceptor superfamily, which includes other compounds like thyroid hormone, glucocorticoids, and sex steroids that go into the receptor and they bind to the nucleus and cause gene transcription. That's why it's such an important, dangerous risk for birth defects, because it can affect the gene transcription in the developing embryo. If you want to learn more about some of the things I've talked about, I'll put a link to the paper that I wrote, which is you can download for free online. Thanks for listening.